and welcome to KellyApy, a self-help podcast. Now, long before the pandemic hit, there was a growing epidemic out there, festering and killing so many victims. I'm talking, of course, about the opioid epidemic. Like COVID, this epidemic, it doesn't care about your race, political affiliation, or finances. Oh no, it is powerful and it is deadly. The National Institute on Drug Abuse and CDC reported that opioid deaths had gone from approximately 21,000 in 2010 to 50,000 in 2019. But it only gets worse. Now, COVID only added fuel to this fire. Isolation, anxiety, depression, coupled with the inability to access treatments, attend therapy sessions, 12-step programs, it raised the number of deaths in 2020 to 93,000. 93,000 deaths due to opioids in 2020. Now, some common opioids on the scene are fentanyl, methamphetamine, prescription painkillers, and heroin. And this crisis just cannot be ignored. My guest today, she's been at the forefront in fighting this battle with these drugs. She herself is in recovery and has a daughter, unfortunately, who's still out there fighting these demons with a heroin addiction. She has a lot to say, and I'm eager to sit down with her and talk to her about her experience with this. So please welcome to the show, Susan. Hi, Susan.
Hello.
Welcome to the show. I'm so glad you could join us and talk to us about addictions, and especially as it relates to opioids. Let's have a conversation about addiction. So tell me a little bit, just so the audience can get to know you. Let's just tell you the quick little story of Susan and your kind of battle with addiction.
Well, I'm going to start off by saying that I came from a family where no addictions were apparent, and I wasn't abused or any of those things. I knew right from wrong. I never was arrested, and I always had this like really open mind to substances and drinking and partying growing up. I mean, I was kind of growing up, in the 70s, so late 70s, teenager, in the late 70s. And, I was still holding on to that hippie mentality that, just trying things is not a bad thing, and, when I look back to the past now and I see how open-minded I was about trying things, I don't really think it was being open-minded in a hippie mentality. I think it was the mind of an addict who was searching for some type of relief, but didn't even know it. So anyway, like I said, I grew up in an Italian family on the East Coast. My dad was from Italy, Catholic churches, Catholic schools, that kind of stuff. And for me, addiction didn't really come into play for me until I was introduced to opiates. So I had some surgeries and found that the lingering pain pills that were, laying around the house they came for really good use later on when stress hit the fan. And then I just started using them not only for pain, but I started using them for stress. And I was like one of those. So I was in the pain pill era, between like 1998 and 2006. So between those years, I probably started my addiction in like 98 slowly. And then by the time 2006, 2008 hit, I was knee deep into my addiction.
What was your drug of choice? Did you have a drug of choice?
Well, yeah, it was mostly opiate pain pills, but there was a bunch of doctors prescribing, like it was the Oxycontin era. So Oxycontin was prescribed as a time-released, safe drug. And there's all kinds of books and all kinds of movies about that.
Right now, Susan, right now they got the dope sick going on. I was watching that on Hulu. It's exactly about this, how you were like one of the people who suffered from this because, yeah, they marketed it like it was this wonder drug that is not addictive. Only less than 1% get addicted. And it's just crazy how society just bought into it, and so many people, so many doctors. And you were one of them, huh?
Well, buying into it isn't even really seem to be what happened. It's getting addicted,
Yeah.
and then believing your own bullshit, like, oh, these doctors just want to help me, and I mean, I found a doctor who was prescribing me, he prescribed me 120 Percocet, 120 Soma, 30 Ambien, and 120 Xanax a month.
How does this guy practice medicine?
Yeah, he ended up losing his license and getting kicked out of the United States, basically, because a bunch of his patients were dying.
Oh my God.
So that was one of my doctors. And that's not to mention all the rest of them, but all the rest of them were more, a little bit more stricter with the amount of pills they gave me. But I went, I mean, I got so addicted that I was what we call pharmacy shopping.
Susan's dog wants to be a part of the podcast.
He was saying that he got addicted too. No, he just came into my life a few years ago. What's funny about my dog is he's from a heroin house. He's from a dope house. Come here. So we say that. Yeah, we say he's coming up on, I think he's coming up on 6 years of sobriety. No,
good for him.
When I got him from my daughter, and he slept on my lap for like 5 days. He was definitely malnutritioned, and he was not physically abused, but he just wasn't being taken care of properly. And the guy that gave him up knew that he couldn't take care of him because he couldn't even take care of himself, and gave him to my daughter, and then my daughter gave him to me. But yeah, so he suffered the effects too because he was around it, so he was getting high off of it too.
Oh wow. Oh,
yeah, yeah, he's a beautiful little thing. But anyway, back to
doctors,
doctor shopping and pharmacy hopping. And I had a friend who was so addicted she was writing fake scripts out because she worked for a doctor, and I was going and getting them filled for us, and so she wouldn't get caught. She ended up getting caught, but they didn't fire her because, I mean, they did fire her, but they didn't prosecute her because they knew she was an addict. And which was pretty huge because back then people were not as aware. But anyway, with all that being said, I remember one time I ran out of pills, and this was early in my addiction, didn't even know I was in my addiction. I ran out of pills, and I got sick, like really sick. And so I looked it up online, and this is when you had those old computers,
yes,
like the old square ones. And I looked it up online, and it said, Loratab is in the same category as heroin. It's just synthetic heroin, and it's between that and cigarette smoking are the hardest things to give up. And when you give up Loratab, it's like giving up heroin, and you're going to get what they call dope sick. And I'm reading all this stuff, and I'm like, what? No way. That's crazy. So for 3 days, I was violently ill, and I got through it. And then not long after it came up, I went to another doctor for something, and they were like, hey, I'll give you some of this for your period cramps. And I was like, okay, well, I was sick for a couple of days from those things. I'll take them again. I'll be fine. And that was the last time I was ever able to do that again. I mean,
wow.
I didn't go to a detox until 2009. And then that's when I learned about so many things. But so at the same time that I went to a detox and found out all about addiction and what the opiates can do to you and all that other stuff, my daughter picked up heroin, but I didn't know it. She was like 14, and she was like experimenting with drugs, and I would find stuff, and she would admit to me she was experimenting with drugs, and that was it. I didn't know that she was smoking heroin until about a year later. And then
and you were still on drugs at the time too?
No, I had just got, so like she was doing stuff while I was using, I'm pretty sure she was, but not till I got sober did I recognize that it seemed to be more than just experimenting, you know, and then all kinds of stuff. I was coming to, so I was beginning to see life for what it was. It took about a year, and in that year, I found out all these things, you know, that she was smoking heroin and she was selling it and she wasn't showing up at school, and I was involved with the school trying to find her half the time, and she was in an abusive relationship and getting beat. It was just all these terrible things, right? So I don't know, I sent her away for a while, and she came back and she started hanging out with the guy that she's with now, and he didn't even do heroin. She I guess introduced him to it, but whatever. She's been with the same guy since then. So I don't know how long they've been together, 8 or 9 years. And they've gotten apartments, they've gotten kicked out. I mean, I can go on and on about the things that happened to them during their addiction. But she had a few stints of some type of sobriety, and she was just so young, you know, and she kept telling me she couldn't live within her own skin when she was cleaned up. And I'm telling you, opiates and heroin are they're a creature of another nature.
Oh, absolutely.
So I hope this leads me smoothly into some other topics, but one of them is I highly recommend medication assisted treatment if you're going to get off of heroin. And what I mean by that is, if you're a full-blown heroin addict, I would suggest these are, and I'm suggesting these things based on what I've seen in my community, is to go get cleaned up. But when you get out, get on medication. Well, get on medication while you're in there. And when you get out, stay on the medication.
Now,
You know,
wait, Susan, just because I'm new to this. When you say go get your medication, did you are there centers that they can go to? Say I'm hooked on heroin or I'm hooked on opiates and I want to get clean. Do I go to a rehab, or are there centers are there centers for specifically dealing with those that are suffering from heroin addictions and stuff like that?
absolutely. There's so many ways that a heroin addict or an opiate addict can get themselves on a different road. There's doctors that will prescribe you a drug called Suboxone. There's centers that prescribe you methadone. And then there is the good old go detox off the stuff and get put on Subutex or Suboxone in rehab or detox. And then when you get out, you manage it with a doctor and coupled with therapy and hopefully a 12-step program. And the reason I highly recommend medication assisted treatment programs after a heroin addict decides to stop using heroin is because the relapse rate, unfortunately, and I don't want to quote statistics, but the relapse rate is outrageous compared to other substances. Yeah. So, and I don't mean to be a downer, but it's reality. It is the reality. Yeah. So I surround myself around people that are politically involved in the movement for the heroin epidemic. I've read Dreamland by Sam Quinnis. If you have a chance to read that, he talks all about the Mexican cartel and how they infiltrated the suburban white America with heroin because they knew the suburban white America had been to pill mills.
We talked about that last night a little bit.
Yeah.
You were saying that, pretty much heroin came as a result of, it was a kind of after effect of the pill mills, the pills that were getting, the doctors were prescribing pills like crazy, and the cartel saw opportunity for them to make some money when the pills started going down, because they knew that eventually we'd catch on and start regulating it. Is that right?
Well, you know what? That's pretty much what I've read and what I've seen in my own community. I mean, when I first got sober was 2009. And just before that, I was hanging out with girls that were taking pills. And one of them was on her way over here with heroin. It just started to make a big impact in the community, like around 2008 here in Las Vegas, that I know of.
Mhm.
And it was targeted to suburban white America. And there was literally every corner you could pick up a sack of dope. And all you had to do is ask somebody who was taking, who got it, and they would call the guy and the guy would drop it off at the corner. And I seen it over and over again when my daughter would stay with me. Sometimes she'd have to go to the corner. It's always the same guy. It's always a Hispanic man in like a 4-door Hyundai. Or the kids are buying big quantities and they're selling it at school. But I think what happened was, what I can't say for sure, but I think a lot of it has to do with the whole pill mill era was telling people that they and their kids could take this drug with impunity, basically. Yeah. So if your kid was getting his teeth pulled and he was 10 years old in 2001, more than likely they were going to give him Loratabs when he came home. Right? So what I think happened is just so many people had pills in their homes and was using pills for everything, that the younger generation was maybe taking their parents' pills and getting hooked, and then finding out that heroin was cheaper and easier to get. And somehow that all tied together, and we have this explosion of 18 to 25-year-olds using heroin, addicted to heroin, and dying from overdose. I also am connected with a guy named Ryan Hampton. He's a political activist. He lives in Vegas now. He's also in recovery from heroin. He wrote 2 books called American Fix and one Unsettled. And Unsettled is actually about the Purdue Pharma lawsuit that went into bankruptcy. So nobody really got paid any money. They totally did not get slapped in the hand at all about all the people that were killed because of the Oxycontin. So I keep in contact with him. I read his books, and he has platforms on Zoom with constituents involved in the political movement of changing the recovery community here in our community by voting or electing certain people that are wanting to move those types of things to happen in our community. So he talks about in his book his experience, and here's what I noticed from 2009 to now. Las Vegas has exploded with rehab and detox centers. I mean, when I first got sober in 2009, and even when I got my daughter into something back then, I think it was 2010, there was hardly anything here, and there was only one place that took government insurance for people that had no insurance, and it was so packed. People were sitting on the grass out front to try to get a bed to get in. And it was a nightmare from what I heard. But now they've opened up government insurance, which is called Medicaid, I believe, to more of the detox centers here in Las Vegas. Almost all of them accept that now. So if you don't have insurance, and I'm so happy about that. And the same thing goes for the Narcan, which is the opiate overdose reversal nasal spray. When that first came to Vegas, it was like, they were asking some prices like $2,000, $500 just for a script. And I did a thing on the news talking about how ridiculous that was. And I have insurance. So now I can go, I mean, it's evolved. Like the system has evolved. Of course, it never evolves fast enough, especially if you're a parent who's lost your child to the overdose. It's not fast enough, right? But me sitting back and just watching what's happened since 2010 to now, I got more involved probably maybe in 2014. I started getting really involved with a charity foundation called There's No Heroin. I was at a convention, and I heard a guy at the mic talk about losing his kid to overdose. And I wanted to know how he continued living his life. So I knew his son, and just started asking a bunch of questions, and I started getting invited to their events, and I've been a volunteer with them since that point too.
And what do
They
they do? What is their purpose and mission, Susan?
There's No Heroines, a charity foundation that gets money for to put kids through a detox or a rehab, and then put them through a sober living home without any charge.
Because a lot of drug addicts don't have money. They don't have. That's why they're stealing the drugs and stuff. They really don't have access to the money. So how are they going to afford to, like you said, get
Most heroin addicts off the street, we like to use the terminology substance users. Like that, we're trying in the community. We are also trying to change the language. So we're calling people people that use heroin. We're trying not to call them heroin addicts anymore. We're calling them people with substance use disorders.
Okay.
So we're not even saying heroin addict anymore. It's hard for me not to still use the terminology because, or the verbiage, because I go to 12-step meetings and we talk like, we talk rock bottom there. Like we make fun of ourselves and we call ourselves names. And it's, it's not funny, but it's just what we do in that particular forum. But overall in society, if I'm talking to someone who doesn't understand addiction, I try to use the verbiage or the terms, substance use disorder. So people with the substance use disorder pretty much get to the bottom before they get help, right? Most of the time they're living on the street and they have no money, they have no ID, they have no food, they have nothing. Their families turn their back on them.
Yeah.
Well, my thought process and the way I want to be active in my community is the absolute opposite of what we've been doing all these years. And that is shutting the door on our family members who are on the street because they're using a drug. I'm but I'm applying in terms of not closing the door on them within reason, right? Continue to ask them if they need help and continue to help them with boundaries. You can't be naive to the fact that if your kid is using that, they're not going to steal from you, because they will. You can't be naive to the fact that if you let them stay in your house, they're probably going to use in your bathroom because they have to, right? But in small steps, like baby steps, we could change the way we have stigmatized alcoholics and addicts. And it starts with me, right? And it starts with you. And it starts with your community and little baby steps, and ending the stigma and stopping the silence is a huge, huge movement, but it's a huge job, because we're not going to be able to convince everybody that alcoholism or addiction to opiates is acceptable, because society refuses to accept it because of the behaviors that we have when we're in our disease of addiction. But behind all that, if we offered more love and support, like some of these other countries who have made drugs not illegal, right? They're shooting their heroin for them up the streets, in medical facilities, and giving them food and places to live and treating them with dignity instead of like, you're a moralistic piece of crap, you deserve to be on the street, you deserve to die. More like, listen, you have a mental disease, right? You have a brain disease coupled with probably mental illness, and you need some help. Now we can't force people to get help, of course not. But if they want the help, being involved in some type of movement to make sure that there's more help like readily available is my goal. And I've had girls in my life that I've helped out that are not back out there, but they're not really like in a program of recovery. And one of them reached out to me recently and she said, I absolutely love the way you spend time with your daughter and post pictures and take her to places and do things with her. Because when I was out there, my mom treated me like a piece of shit, and she still treats me like a piece of shit because I'm on methadone and says I'm a junkie. She goes, and you've never done that to your daughter and you've always been loving. She goes, and I suggest that you continue to do that. And now this is coming from an addict who is using heroin herself, right? Somebody who I know, saying that, you know, she can't get any respect or dignity from her mother while she works 2 jobs, goes to school, gets straight A's, and raises a kid on her own. And those are the types of things that I want to change. Like
a little more compassion for the addict versus the contempt. Is that where you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, not everybody's going to be able to accept that.
Yeah. And you know, let me ask you this, Susan. So what about the enabling? You know, how they say you enable the addict by babying them or catering to them. What do you say to the person who says that, who might be listening and says, oh, you'd be enabling them? How do you respond to that?
I say that a certain amount of enabling saves people's lives. And I also say, would you leave your dog on the street to starve in the cold or the heat? You wouldn't, would you? You treat your dog better than that.
Yep.
There, you know, people just it's a personal thing, and people get to choose however they want to deal with their sick child or husband or wife. They get to do that. I give them the dignity just like I do the addict themselves, right?
Yeah.
So however people want to deal with their things, go right ahead. You know, I don't really know what enabling means. I guess enabling means giving the addict money and taking them to the dope dealer. I guess that's enabling. But how about if your kid's sick and you're taking them to a detox and they're so sick that they can't even get up off the floor? Yeah, I probably would give them money and take them to the dope dealer. I've done shit like that. Trust me, I've done it all. I've done it all. I've left her on the streets. I watched her live in a truck in the desert with an abusive dope dealer. I've not let her, but watched her sleep at the park in a bathroom by my house, and nothing was working. Nothing's working. And I was praying one morning and I heard this voice say, you wouldn't even leave your dog out there. What are you doing? Go get her. So from that point on, I have found ways to keep her under shelter, at least shelter. And you know, the lockdown actually was a blessing for her and her boyfriend, because they both ended up getting unemployment and rental assistance and food cards, and they've been able to, you know, live with a roof and all these other things and being treated with dignity. And they've had their moments of where I've got medication. I have medication at my house for them, and I've taken them, you know, I've taken them to places, and I'll never stop. I'll never stop doing it for them. You know, I mean, I know each day is different, and at least they know they have somebody who is willing to take them to doctors. You know, like when my daughter doesn't feel good, I take her to the doctor. I don't know. I try to have, like, I'm not going to sit around waiting for my daughter to get sober and clean, but I'm not going to sit around and ignore her for 10 years while she decides to stay into, you know, be sick in her disease. I mean, she was also diagnosed as manic depressive. So, you know, one thing society doesn't get is when somebody's mentally ill, they usually take up a life of drugs and alcohol. And until they get that mental thing straightened out, you know, it just takes time, especially she's 25 years old. So, but, you know, to switch the conversation a little bit, they say that in the next few years, the highest use of heroin is going to be between like 40 and 55. And it's really crazy because I was buying some CBD stuff from the dispensary, and there was an old couple in front of me, and I just started talking to them, and I said, are you guys here now because they started getting strict with the pain pills or anything like that? And they said, oh yeah. They said they pretty much kind of cut us off from our pain pills, even though that's not true. There was this whole thing on the news a couple of years ago that doctors, and even if you were trying to get pain pills, doctors were making it really strict and
Mhm.
get 2 weeks to play. I think all that stuff's done. I think they're already back to giving people what they want. Anyway, that's what these people said to me. They were like, yeah, we find it much better to use THC and CBD than opiates. And I was like really happy for them.
Oh, wow.
Way to go. Because when you go to the dispensary out here, you see people like in their 60s and 70s in there, like a lot of them. And I'm like, this is great. That means that they're
Mhm.
not having to take all that stuff for their arthritis and their backs. And, you know, instead of taking all those pills now, they're doing it the natural way.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I don't
And
know.
we could do a whole other podcast on CBD stuff. So stay tuned on that one, Susan. But what would you like to see happen? I know we're running out of time here, but this is just a fascinating conversation with you. What would you like to see change in society? Like you said already, um, really having more compassion for the addict and not stigmatizing mental illness, those people suffering from mental illness. But with the movements, the political movements, what do you think we can do politically? What would you say to change what's going on in the recovery world?
That's like that question is way too big for anything that I have knowledge about. But what I can say is if you're compassionate or if you're passionate about the movement, just get involved with your local community and your local charities that advocate for addicts that are addicted to heroin. It just starts right there. Like, you know,
Right.
sometimes we get like overwhelmed. We're like, well, what kind of movement, you know, what
Mhm.
can just me do? And it's like, well, if you do it, and then you bring like 5 other girls that want to do it with you, and then they bring it, you know what I'm saying? I mean, that's where the movement starts.
Starts at the
So
ground. Yep.
I'm just gonna keep, I'm gonna keep advocating for them until the day I die. And I've already said that on many platforms. I will advocate for the heroin addict till the day I die in any way that I can, because I've seen too many parents lose their children. I've seen too many parents try tough love and lose their children. I've seen all of it. And I just know that if I just keep on trying and making that little small dent, that it'll turn out to be a big dent. And then I just try to surround myself around people that are involved in the same movement. And then the people that don't understand, it's okay. They're not going to understand, and it's okay. They don't have to. But in one way or another, addiction is going to affect everybody's family. It always does.
And
And I
especially
hope,
after COVID. Yeah.
yeah, and I hope that I'm there to be able to help somebody. You know, I talk openly at the casino I work at about the heroin epidemic, and I've had people in confidence come to me and ask me to help their families out, and I've done that, you know, and I'm not embarrassed. I'm not ashamed. I'm open to talking about it and helping anybody who needs help in confidence too. I will not, you know, divulge their private information if
Mhm.
they need help. But you would be amazed at how many people are touched by this opiate and still are. It's just,
Yeah.
it's
Oh,
crazy.
there really are. And I think that's why this podcast is so important, this particular podcast, because it really is an epidemic out there. And you are making a difference, Susan. You know, like you said, at the ground level, it starts at the ground level. Everything starts at the ground level here. And so, Susan, we're coming to the end of the podcast. Went so quick. There'll be more. Don't you worry. We'll be having more, Susan.
Aw.
Um, so Susan, what's your message? I want to end on I always like to try to end on a positive note with the podcast. And so what is your message to the opioid addict out there, or the parent who is a parent of the opioid addict suffering from the monster disease of heroin or pain pills or whatever is eating their life up? What are you going to say? What's your message of hope for these people?
Well, my message of hope to parents are don't ever stop loving them. Don't ever stop loving them, because that's all they need. That's all they need is love. And then my message to the persons that's still out there, the persons that are still out there is, we're waiting for you. All you have to do is just walk one more step. You know, I always tell my daughter, I know I know you see the light at the end of the tunnel. Cause I always tell her she sees the light, because I always try to instill in her that she's got the light around her. I never say darkness. I say there's angels surrounding you at all times and you are in the light. But all you got to do, because I know you see the tunnel with the light at the end, just keep walking just a few more feet, baby, and you'll be outside. And I tell her that all the time. So that's my message to anybody that wants to get help. And there's so many people out there that want to help you. You would not even believe it. There's so many people. Thank God there's beautiful men and women out there that want to help people.
There's light at the end of the tunnel, like you said, and there's a wonderful life awaiting you on the other side, you know, and people like Susan will help you get there. So I'm going to close with a quote, Susan. And believe it or not, this quote comes just in time for Halloween from Edgar Allan Poe, who also, I mean, his addiction's been around for a long time and he suffered from it. And he writes, I have absolutely no pleasure in the stimulants in which I sometimes so madly indulge. It has not been in the pursuit of pleasure that I have been periled. Wait, it is not in the pursuit of pleasure that I have periled life and reputation and reason. It has been the desperate attempt to escape from torturing memories, from a sense of insupportable loneliness and a dread of some strange impending doom. I think any addict or somebody who suffers from the addictions understands exactly where Edgar Allan Poe is coming from, because, you know, we all suffer.
And I do want to say one more thing too. I want to say to the addicts out there and alcoholics out there, anybody who's suffering from addiction, any addiction, your brain is not wired normal. It suffers from low dopamine and there's serotonin issues, and it's coupled with mental illness. It's not your fault. You are sick and you need help.
Yeah. Go out there and get that help. And Susan, I want to thank you for making a little dent with this little podcast we have going here. Do you want to really quickly plug any organizations that people should check out? Like, I know you said Heroes for Heroin is one. Anything else you would like to people to check out?
Yeah, well, it's called There's No Hero in Heroin.
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
And it's got a Facebook page. It's here in Las Vegas. I highly suggest, if you're interested in the opiate epidemic, is reading Ryan Hampton's book, American Fix, and possibly even pulling up his Facebook. He's all over the news all the time. He's in Washington all the time. He's a young guy who has like 6 years of recovery, and he's just an amazing, amazing advocate for this, for our problem. And yeah, and you were just saying at the beginning about Dope Sick on Hulu. I haven't watched it yet, but
oh, it's so good.
Yeah, sometimes really hard for me to watch that stuff. But anyway, yes, there's so many people out there that that can help you out and educate you if you want to be educated.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Susan, for joining us today. It has been a wonderful conversation. And to my listeners, I want to thank you so much for tuning into KellyApy. If you're enjoying this podcast, make sure to subscribe. We'll be doing this for a half an hour each week. And if you'd like more positive messages, you can check out my YouTube vlog, Monday Messages, hosted by me, Kelly Mahoney. Until next week, have a great week, and we'll see you next week for another edition of KellyApy. Bye.